shootout between Damage Control Timeline, the original Timeline, and Boss DD20. I have signal running through the pedal board so that we can turn the loops on by 6 and 8, and at least start off this video with doing a blind test, not knowing which is in which loop. I'm running a cheap little Godin SD and matchless HC30. So what you had right there was a quarter note with modulation on kind of an analog setting for both pedals. Let's go through just a little bit of that again. The analog setting on both pedals, and as long as we've got a Strat in our hands and we're testing out delay pedals, let's test out the dotted 8 setting. And sorry if you hate me for this, but test before we do them, because this one you can really tell the difference, is we're going to do kind of a longish swell setting here. So we'll do this, and let's do the swells. I know it's really boring, but I want to hear the decay. Alright, so you can really hear the difference on the decay. This one is the DD20 in loop 6. And you can hear the decay. Doesn't decay nearly as well as the Timeline. However, on some of the other settings, even with the U2 one, sounded pretty close. I really liked what the DD20 did. It sounded really close. And the DD20 also might even be able to get a little bit dirtier than the Timeline if you go back and listen to the analog setting. Although the Timeline has much more control over the modulation, and just overall might have a more hi-fi, nice sound to it. However, not too much difference. DD20 total sleeper delay. For the price it is and what it does, it's great. Also has a beats per minute readout, which the Timeline doesn't, but the Timeline 2 is coming out, and it does have a beats per minute readout, and there was much rejoicing. So let's go to just a different setting here. This is one of my favorites. With delays, this is kind of a reverse swell thing. This is the DD20. let's see how the timeline does at that same setting. So very nice. I've got to favor the timeline on that. Let's do another setting. This is one that the timeline just excels at. That's its multi-tap setting. So what the multi-tap does, I've got it just sitting in the background for a reverby sound, which I like to use almost constantly, which is probably bad, but in another way, very, very good. So you can hear that. That's just beautiful. Sit behind your sound. So I'll use it on almost anything. Okay, and then let's turn that off, and then let's try the same thing on the DD20. I tried to approximate the timeline. This is the closest I get on the DD20. It's not bad. It's not as washy as the timeline. So. Alright, let's hear the timeline again. Just beautiful the way the timeline does that. And then we have just a little bit more time. So let's see how each of them does with gain. I'm going to go back to the dotted settings because I love them. And let's see how they do with gain. We've got the timeline on right now. Really take on a life of their own. We put some fuzz behind them, and then let's see what the DD20 does with that. DD20 actually takes it really, really well. Doesn't take on its own character like the timeline does, which is nice, but it really holds its own and maintains its delayed sound. So both great pedals, probably the edge to the